Now I'm going to take some of the things that sank to the bottom, and we are going to see what we can do in order to get them to float on top of the water. Now the first thing that I chose is the rock, because it's kind of heavy feeling, and you automatically think, you know what, yeah, that's going to sink all the way down to the bottom. But I'm going to do something with my rock. I'm going to take my rock and I'm going to take an Easter egg. Now I decided to go two-tone here. So I'm going to put my rock, my heavy little rock that sank to the bottom, and I'm going to put it inside my Easter egg. Now, if you think a minute, it's kind of in there with a lot of air. So what do you think might happen to my rock when I put it on top of the water inside the Easter egg? Do you think it's going to float, or do you think it's going to sink like it did a few moments ago? You ready to find out? Okay, make your guess. Here we go. We're going to take it, and I think I'm going to drop it. Let's see what happens. Whoop, splashed me. Where is it? It is floating on top of the water. Can you see that in there? Look at there. All right, let's see that air that's all inside here, and it's got a lot of surface area there to float on top of the water. But what happens if we add something else to it? Let's take our die. What else can I put in there? How about if I put, these all are things that sank to the bottom. I'll put some money in there. Okay, let's see. Oh, Cody, you're trying to see too, huh? All right, let's see. They're in there. Got a lot of stuff in here. Now let's see. I'm going to put it on top of the water. And do you think it is going to sink to the bottom? Or do you think it is going to float at the top of the water? Let's see. I'm going to carefully place it. Wow, that egg actually is helping. I don't know if you can see it there. There we go. It's down in the water a little bit, but it's still light enough to where it is floating on the water. Whoop. Oh my gosh, what happened? What happened? Where do you see bubbles? My egg finally sank to the bottom, but guess what filled up that water? Excuse me, guess what filled up the egg? Water. It took the place of the air and it sunk to the bottom, because look at here. See all the water that's coming out? So because the water filled up the space in the egg, it sunk to the bottom. But again, before it fills it up, this is kind of like how when a boat, if it gets a hole in the bottom and the water fills up the space inside the boat will sink. Just like our egg did. Here, I'll put this back down in here. There we, whoops, can you see it? There we go. It is floating, but the minute I fill it up with water, whoops, you can't see that. I'm helping it along a minute. Okay, it's got water in it, so the minute it fills up with water, it begins to sink down into my container until it fills up all the way. Oh my goodness, you can't see anything. Until it fills up all the way, and there it floats to the bottom like a sinking boat would. We saw that when we put things inside the egg and the air occupied a lot of the space in the egg, that our objects floated. Well, I tried to think about some things that we could use that would have air that we could use to help make something float. So I decided to get my scissors, and I looked around my house and I found bubble wrap. And I put some tape on it because I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to put them in the middle of my bubble wrap, and I'm going to wrap them up. And if any of you have ever played with bubble wrap before, you might remember or know that our bubble wrap is plastic and it has bubbles. That's why it's called bubble wrap. And the bubbles are filled with, let me see if I can pop this. Oh, air. And that is what helps to cushion something when you pack it, but it also takes up space around an object so that it would make it a little less dense, a little less heavier. And let's see what happens. Take it. I'm going to wrap my bubble wrap around my little pair of scissors. So now there is more air around the pair of scissors, and this is going to give it what we call buoyancy. Okay, and it's going to allow it to hopefully float. So let's see what happens. I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to place it, and as long as the air does not get inside of, the water does not go inside my bubble wrap, it should float. Let's see. Right here. There. So here again is something that did not float before is floating now. All right. How about if we take a rock and we put it in here? I hope I don't get my tape too wet because then it won't stick, will it? Let me undo this, and I'm going to replace, and you know what? I thought I'd get really daring. I thought I would use a bigger rock, because what's going to happen if I put this in here? My little rock sank to the bottom. So do you think my big rock will sink? I think so. I don't want to drop it because I don't want to break my bowl. Oh, there it goes. Oh dear, now I have it all wet. But it's a big heavy rock, and it sank to the bottom. So now I'm going to take my rock and I'm going to put it inside this small piece of bubble wrap. And what do you think is going to happen? Let's see. I'm going to take it, wrapping it up. Okay, now it's got those little air pockets all around it. So you think it's going to float? Let's see. Take it. Oh no. It went to the bottom. So is there enough air taking the place around it, giving it more of the ability to float? No. But what happens if we choose, bigger bubble wrap? All right. This bubble wrap is still a small piece, but if you look at the air bubbles around or throughout my bubble wrap, the air bubbles are bigger, which allows more air to cushion around the rock. Now I am going to take it, and all right, now I wrapped it all the way up. I had to use quite a bit of tape because the bigger bubble wrap is bulkier. I can't even say that. So, but I didn't want the water to leak inside my wrapping project here. But now I'm going to take it, and that same rock is inside this bigger piece of bubble wrap, or bigger bubble wrap. And let's see what begins to happen. So I'm going to pick up my camera. Let's take it, and let's see if it floats or if it sinks. Now it floats because the larger bubbles allow more air to cushion around the rock, therefore making it less, I guess, dense, heavier, and it will float. We're going to try one more. We're going to go back to our little bubble wrap, but we are going to make it a bigger piece of small bubbles. Now, I'm going to be right back, and after I wrap my rock in the smaller bubble wrap, but this time a larger sheet. I took my smaller bubble wrap now that was cut into a larger piece. And I have wrapped it around my rock. Now, if you remember, when we had it as a smaller piece, it did not work because there was not enough air cushioning around the object to make it lighter than the water that it pushes aside. But when we use the bigger, I could still use a smaller piece. It's a little bit bigger than the one before, but I could still use a smaller piece to float a heavier object because I gave it more air that was in around the rock. Now, I have taken the smaller bubbles, but a bigger piece. And we're gonna see what happens with that. Let me bring this over here. And let's see, are we ready? Let's put it down in. And again, you don't want the water to fill up the gaps in the bubble wrap because that will make it not as light and airy. So let's see what happens. Are we ready? Do you think it's now gonna float with the smaller bubbles? Let's see. Yeah, look at there. It flipped over, did a trick. You don't want that to happen in a boat. But here we go. Now, what I would like you to do is put this down, I would like you at home to find some things that float and some that don't float. And then I want you to try and figure out some ways that you could take those things that did not float and what you can do to make them float. And we'll talk more about some things that can float and things that don't. Maybe some of the things I choose tomorrow might be some things that you chose today and you will already know the answers. So have fun, stay dry, don't make too much of a mess, but enjoy and see what you can figure out. I'll talk to you tomorrow.